Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Genoa, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products.
Steph, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Mate, I've followed your work for quite a while and have loved seeing things over the last few years in particular. But for those that haven't been exposed to your work, do you want to give a little history on where you've been and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, for me, and I somewhat answer this question a little differently every time, sometimes the same, sometimes a little different. And today what I'm feeling to really go into is relationships, right? And the power of relationships. And as a young man and as a child particularly, and as a young child and as a teenager moving into manhood, from boyhood to manhood, my relationships were very disconnected and very scattered, particularly my familial relationships, and they were unsafe for me. And it became a priority to create safety in my relationships. And I was very blessed to find safety in my relationships, in male friendships at a fairly young age, around sort of 12 to maybe 13 years of age, when I was coming into age. And my friends, my circle of friends that were in my neighborhood really became a refuge for me from the violence and the challenges that I was experiencing at home. And whilst that was healing, it also comes at a cost. And the cost that it came at was the level of attachment and the level of meaning and depth and importance that I placed on those friendships. And so as humans, we're fallible. And when we make mistakes and we hurt each other, because, you're never going to be in a, we're not, there's a saying, we're not friends and we're not real friends until we've had a fight, right? And boys, coming into manhood, we're going to argue. And so when that happened, it would break me because I thought, wow, my whole world is falling apart. I don't have anything at home. I don't have anything here. Then what am I? Who am I? Where can I go? Where can I feel safe in the world? And so that experience, and many others, of course, really laid a strong foundation for how I saw myself in the world and how important relationships were to me. And that's what really got me intrigued in human performance, the human potential movement, understanding what we're capable of in and out of relationship with other people, but in relationship to ourselves and the things that matter to us. And I just went down this rabbit hole of self-exploration, existential exploration, informational exploration, pragmatic, embodied exploration, which came a little later, unfortunately. I wish I'd led with that because it would have given me so much more wisdom, and I probably wouldn't have hurt so many people and hurt myself along the way, or basically all my life up until my early 30s. However, grateful that I learned the way I did and grew the way I did because it's just the way that it needed to happen for me. But that's my focus on relationships and why relationships are so important. Whether they're business relationships, service-based relationships, intimate, romantic, sexual, our relationships to our families, our relationship to our trauma, to our generational trauma, to our collective trauma, to our collective potential as a humanity, to our relationship to Mother Earth, and what that really looks like and feels like in the world. And for me, relationships are the crux of life, especially in this 3D physical world that we live in.
What does the work look like? I know you do plenty of it and have for a long time, but what does that work look like from, say, your teens when you had those relationships that you held on to tightly and by the sounds of it at different times potentially dysfunctional as well? But what's that transition and healing process look like for you to find yourself in a position now where the relationship dynamic might be slightly different?
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. You know, there's sort of somewhat officially 17 steps or stages to that, but you know, we can break that down in more simplistic terms. But essentially, it's us seeking a different way of being in a different life, and then going through the gauntlet of fire, really crossing that bridge that is rickety and unstable and uncertain, and venturing into the unknown, into the mystery, and establishing a new sense of self in that space and in that place. And then coming through that with the wisdom, the gifts, you know, the learnings, the teachings, and coming back to our life that really isn't our life anymore, but really a new life. And so for me, it really began with seeking, and a desire to seek, and a desire to just stop suffering. And I know that's always an inside job. Forgiveness is an inside job. Our opportunity to stop suffering is an inside job. Our ability to see ourselves as opposed to waiting for someone else to see us is an inside job. You know, self-worth is an inside job. And so it was this seeking. And it usually begins for most of us, you know, seeking in books or mentors, or going to try some new experience, whether it be yoga or a form of meditation or a somatic technique like breath work, whatever it may be, right? But we're exploring what's unfamiliar to us and what's uncomfortable. And for me, I just started exploring more and more what is uncomfortable for me, what is unfamiliar, and how uncomfortable can I get? And to be careful not to get addicted to the discomfort as well, right? Because then as men particularly, we can wear that as a badge of honor. And so look at me, I did this very uncomfortable thing and I got through it. Look how strong I am. Love me, respect me, adore me, you know? And that's just really coming from wounding, of feeling insignificant and not feeling enough, and really yearning for mum and or dad's love, and an array of other quote unquote dysfunctions that come from unresolved childhood issues. But again, all of that is a process of seeking and exploration and having feedback, seeking mentors and people that can reflect back to you earnestly and honestly who you are and how you're being, give you insight so that they can help you see the forest through the trees, can be tremendous for one's growth. And that was tremendous to my own path as well, is being in enough humility to say, you know what, I need help. I need support. I can't do this on my own. Yes, there are times when I need to be in solitude, and I spend a lot of time in solitude. And I spend a lot of time in isolation and loneliness as well. Solitude is the more deliberate, healthier path. Isolation and loneliness is almost something forced upon us because we feel we're not in control of our own selves. And so there are times in our lives where we are going to need support. And I encourage everyone to reach out for support, because support was really literally what saved my life. One of the big things that saved my life.
What did that support look like for you, and at what stage of your life did that come? Based on what you said earlier in terms of reading between the lines, and I've heard one of your interviews talk about your kind of family dynamic. What did the healing look like from a family dynamic, and where did that support start to show up for you?
So the support started to show up when I became truly ready to receive the support. And that was me really releasing my masks and being very honest with the people in my life that mattered to me, you know, my friends, my family, people that were important to me, and not to be in false bravado, and to remove the mask of I've got this and everything's okay when it really isn't. And to be really honest, hey, I'm really struggling financially. I'm really struggling with my self-worth and self-esteem. I'm really struggling with body image stuff. I'm really struggling with loving myself and liking who I am in the world. I'm really struggling with my sex addiction and my sex compulsion and my love compulsion. And I'm really struggling with not knowing so much about myself. And it looked like not only my family and friends, but seeking professional support, counselors, shamans, somatic healers and therapists, psychologists, coaches, guides, like really, really seeking support in ways that I wasn't before, and allowing myself to be witnessed, but I had to witness myself first.
Often with addictions comes a level of shame. What did that, and you mentioned sex addictions there. I can't remember if you mentioned other addictions, but what did that process look like for you in terms of moving through it? Was it finding someone who could hold space really well for you? Was it being able to sit with it yourself? What did that kind of entry point look like as you started to work through your addictions and potentially your relationship with both the masculine and the feminine, which I'm sure we'll get into soon as well?
Yeah, both, to answer your question. So it's sitting with people that could receive me with non-judgment, compassion, and empathetic resonance, which gave me a real life example of being able to meet myself in non-judgment and compassion, which I wasn't very good at because I wasn't taught how. I was taught how to be very judgmental. I was shown how to be very judgmental and how to be very non-compassionate, and how to have hate run through me, and anger and aggression and rage. And then it was also being with myself and learning to love those parts of me that I'd been rejecting and neglecting and hating for so long. And that's a process, man. Like that wasn't this is a realization and awareness. It was a realization and awareness after many years of deep work, immersive work in that. And for me, I had to bring my shame to the light. Shame is a beast. It's a behemoth. And it underpins so much of our pain that we experience, repetitive patterns of pain that we experience as adults, psychological, psycho-emotional, psychosocial pain that we experience in our relationships. And shame underpins that, and we hide. Shame wants to hide, and it causes us to hide more and more. And so we lay a mask upon mask upon mask about how we are in the world, which pulls us further and further away from who we truly, truly are in the world, right? I'm actually in the process of just finishing my book, which is released September 20th. And a big part of that, I share a lot of my story in there, interwoven throughout many different lessons and so forth. But a big part of that really connects to our childhood experiences and how they shape who we are as adults, and what we can do about that to shift that narrative, right? And not only shift the narrative, but shift our experience of reality. And that in and of itself can be a game changer when it comes to living the life that we truly desire. It's at some level, it's beyond manifestation and beyond the law of attraction or the power of attraction. It's really about healing and completing wound cycles, somatically, spiritually, emotionally, physiologically, psychologically, so that we are able to really, truly live in alignment without being in cover-up, without being in multiple lies that we layer and stack on each other.
You mentioned there the connection between childhood experiences and how that tends to show up in our wounds and triggers and dysfunction. What did you notice about your addictions, maybe even in particular your sex addiction and your relationship to the feminine and the, I guess, relationship that you had to your mum early on as well?
Well, for me, I needed the addiction or the compulsion to feel alive, to feel good in my being, to feel free, to feel freedom. Like the connection for me was I would engage a great deal in cheating and infidelity in my previous relationships because I felt so constricted. Like I wanted the intimacy and the closeness and the idea of being close to someone and having someone see me, but I could never really be seen. My fear of intimacy came through because it's what I experienced and what I learned in my childhood. And so I would feel like this sensation of annihilation coming through me, like I was dying. And so one of the ways I would remedy that, instead of going to heroin, I'd drink a lot as well. In my early days, in my early adulthood, I abused alcohol massively to forget, to numb. Then later I used exercise and high performance sports and competition to numb and to forget and to distract. But I used sex a lot, visiting massage parlors and prostitutes and just casual one night stands and so forth, all whilst being in a relationship or sometimes out of relationship as well. Most of the time, both actually. And so I used that as a way to feel freedom in my body, right? It was my coping strategy. And that was very challenging because I was constantly caught in these guilt and shame cycles and living a lie that was very uncomfortable. Yet it gave me extensive relief. And then the guilt and shame would put me off it for a while, but then the sense of annihilation would come up again and I'd go straight back to it. And I didn't know how to be in my truth because my truth as a child growing up was consistently shamed and suppressed. So I couldn't bring that in a relationship. Now, I'm not blaming my child. I'm not blaming my parents. You asked a question earlier about forgiveness around parents and family and dynamics and so forth. Again, that's a process that happens at multiple levels within our being over a time span. And releasing that, and forgiveness is an inside job again, but releasing that and getting to a process of, can I redefine these experiences? It comes with release. It comes with somatic release, closing the loop on trauma and learning how to regulate my nervous system, our nervous systems. That's a process, man. It takes years, often years. Yeah, if not longer. Like it's something that I'm still learning and still growing through. As adept as I am at it, it's still something that I'm learning.
What does it look like? So obviously you're in a relationship. How many years have you been with Christine?
4.
What does that look like now? She's obviously on a very similar kind of page and wavelength to you and the work that you do, and you guys cross paths a lot there. What did that look like? Because I assume you would have had to step up and be called forward massively for that relationship to blossom the way it has. What does that healing and growth journey look like for you over the last 4 years?
Yeah, so I'd done a lot of work prior to that, and so had she. And then our relationship brought up more immersion into self and more immersion into the relationship, and we stuck with it. The beginning was very challenging after the initial honeymoon period, which didn't last that long, to be honest. It actually was the shortest honeymoon period I've ever experienced in any relationship. And our stuff really came up, and we were just committed to working through it and willing, and it really transformed our entire relationship and laid very strong foundations and trusting foundations for how we relate to each other and what we mean to each other, and how we want to navigate conflict and difficulty and challenge within the dynamics of our relationship. And to also notice when we're coming from past aspects of ourselves, or when we're genuinely coming from something that's very important to us in the now. And often it's a combination of both, but how we express that really matters. So we have agreements in place as well. And again, there's just the level of maturity in this relationship, because we're both willing to be in that, and we're also seasoned in inner work, personally, intrapersonally and interpersonally and professionally. And that really supports us and helps us as well. But our life and our relationship isn't a personal development party in any capacity. We're very human. We're human with each other, and we aim to repair really well and efficiently and with love. And we come back to love, and we'd rather be in love than be right. And there's nothing wrong with speaking your truth and being in your truth and being quote unquote right, but at what cost? And that's what we want to move away from. We don't want it to be at the cost of each other.
You mentioned agreements in the relationship. What are those agreements for you guys? What does that look like from a framework?
Oh, there's many. I mean, to go into all of them would be, I guess, arduous and extensive. But essentially, at a macro level, it's how we want to care for each other, how we want to demonstrate love and affection to each other, and understanding what each other's needs are in that space. How we want to navigate conflict. How we want to, I don't want to use the words plan and prepare. They're appropriate words, but how do we dream weave? How do we dream weave our future together? And what agreements do we have in place that keeps us connected in a very busy world that we live in, right? I am very much in my purpose and in my dharma. Christine is the same. We just have a newborn child. She's 7 weeks young. So, how do we still stay connected? And then we have agreements and practices that most of the time, we adhere to them, and sometimes life gets in the way and we don't. Again, we're human, right? But coming back to that as a foundation is very, very useful for us.
What does it look like? You mentioned you've had a 7-week-old, so it's probably a pretty crazy time for you. And how that, with whether it's the relationship and the growth and the healing that's been required with Christine, what's come up for you from a emotional, energetic, mental point of view in this kind of first 7 weeks with a newborn? Often stories come up, limiting beliefs and your own kind of triggers and traumas and wounds. Is there anything that you've noticed that's come up for you in the first 7 weeks?
Oh, a lot, man. I mean, so much, brother, so much around, am I an effective husband and partner and father? Am I just getting frustrated? Some of my selfish tendencies are coming up because so much of my time has been quote unquote taken from me. At least that's the perception of it, right? And freedom is a value and a wound for me as well. And so I find myself, grasping this old childhood strategy, trying to be more selfish in order to feel a little more whole or feel a little more connected or a little more free, right? And so, insignificance, insecurity about my insignificance in the world. Because I took about 7 weeks off. I was still working, but I really slowed down for 7. This is my first day back at work, and I'll be completely transparent with you as well, man. I did not want to do this interview. Like I've been going since the morning, meetings and clients, and I'm like, I got to cancel this interview. I honestly just didn't. I thought, no, I've committed to it. I'm here, but I didn't want to do it because not because it's you. I don't even know you. I've just met you, right? Really, because I just didn't want another thing. Because after this, I've got more work. And I've got to be, I want to be with my baby and I want to support my wife. And so I'm learning to navigate all of that and the overwhelm that comes with that as well, right? And back to the insignificant piece is that, I've been sort of detached from the world. It may not look like that on social media or my productivity, but all of that, I have content. I could not produce any more content starting today and I would have content for a year. And that's posting on every platform once, twice a day. Like literally for 12 months. So I just produce a lot of content because I enjoy creating and writing and expressing. But I've been quite detached. And so these feelings of insignificance have come up a great deal as a man in the world. Like I've paused, like it feels like I've paused my dharma or paused my purpose. And how I would normally deal with that is to do more, be more, to hustle harder. And I've had moments of that last 7 weeks, but I've also stepped back and I've just slowed down. And I've observed and I've sat with my feelings and felt them and moved through them and reflected upon who I've been and what I'm experiencing and how I'm showing up in relationship. And a lot of it, I feel like, I had a cry yesterday to a couple of brothers that I'm in business with as well. I just said, guys, I feel like I'm fucking failing as a father, as a partner. I'm just not getting it. This is really difficult. And I don't like not being good at things. So it brings up that wound as well, So there's a lot, man. And it's really teaching me how to be more selective with my time as well and where I allocate my resources and energies. And I'm very blessed that I work from home, which is fantastic. So, I get to be in the essence of my child's field. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's definitely tough.
I'm not sure which business partners you're talking about, but if it's Garen and Preston, I assume they're perfect people to lean on, both having kids and, Garen's actually not that far in front of you in terms of his little one, but Preston's a bit older, but I assume they're perfect people to be able to lean on to for advice and empathy with what you're going through.
100%. And they're beautiful. And those were the two people I was referring to yesterday. We were talking, we're just going back and forth via text and voice notes and so forth. And they are, and I'm very blessed that I have amazing men in my community here in Austin and in Australia and all over the world that I can lean into when I need support or need anything. Very blessed in that way. And I've also cultivated and created that in my life too.
We had Garen on the podcast the other week, mate. Fuck, I love that bloke. He's brilliant. His energy. Awesome. What's the 100%. Empowered's obviously something that the three of you have kind of brought to light over the last 12 months, I think, probably. Is it? Ish?
Yeah, ish. Yeah, less, but yeah, around that.
What's that look like and what's the plan with that over the coming years?
Yeah, the plan is the vision is to be the largest and the most impactful men's movement that has ever graced this planet. Impact and income. And I say that very purposely because we want to create financial stability for all men in the world as well, help them create that for themselves and give them the tools to do that, right? Mental health, mental wellness, emotional wellness, relational wellness. So that's the overall vision. We had an amazing meeting this morning. We have some great leadership in our team, men doing really deep work here on themselves and within our community. That's going to take Empowered Brotherhood to a next level. In the next 3 months, we're really locking down. We've partnered with someone that's going to help us get our message out into the world in a really unique way. And we're banking on that's going to work, and it's going to work really well. And if it doesn't, we go back to the drawing board. But we're all committed to this, and we're very deeply entrenched in this movement.
What inspired the men's work for you? I know it's a big part of the work that you do, and early on you kind of mentioned, the drawing and potentially even the attachment to boys or men at that stage. But what was the inspiration behind you being really drawn into men's work?
Two things. My experience with men growing up. My father was a very aberrant, violent, disconnected, confusing relationship. And my behavior as a man, as an adult growing up, my relationship to myself. So then I just started, doing deep men's work in my late 20s for myself. And that was a rolling process. And then after a few years, and I'd done some deeper work with myself, which was quite profound, I started to engage in, really just working with men specifically as well. Not that to be honest, I think if I look at my one-on-one roster now, there's probably slightly more women than there are men, and my audience is more women than men. But I do extensive work with men and with women as well. But that men's work is very special to me, because if I can support a young man in not necessarily having the experiences that I had, and quote unquote the mistakes that I made, I feel like I'm doing something really meaningful in this world, because the effect and the impact that man then has on everything else in his environment, including the feminine and the women in his life, can be far more deliberate and far more safe.
Awesome. I'm again mindful of your time and getting back to dad life. The coaching program that you guys run, what's that about, and who's that kind of targeted towards?
The Elementum Coaching Institute. Yeah. So that is really targeted to look, any level of coach, to be honest. But really that young coach, not in age demographic, new to coaching, that person that is wanting that coach that is wanting to make big impact in the world. That their eyes are big in the world, their ears are pointed up, and they want to help others, and they don't necessarily have the tools to do so, and they haven't really embodied that themselves. And so we're really looking at those younger coaches that are very new on their path, that have just started out. Maybe they've been a couple of years into it and they're not really getting traction. They want to learn how to get traction. So we help them. Part of that is a quite an extensive business curriculum that helps them launch their business, but the majority of it is doing your inner work and providing them with tools and techniques and so many resources that they can work with their clients on, right? So Elementum Coaching is really about that. And that's my wife and I, Preston and Alexi. Alexi is Preston's wife. Preston and I in two businesses together, obviously Empowered Brotherhood and then Elementum Coaching. And I just literally got off a 2-hour call now with our 2022 cohort. We're very, very excited about Elementum and the impact that can make, on the planet, and not just for coaches, but, individuals. Like when you become a better person, when you become a more whole person, more regulated person in your nervous system, and you heal some of that pain and trauma, whether you're a coach or not, you're making a more positive impact in the world. That's important. The people that you're coming into contact with, the people that you haven't come into contact with yet, you are impacting them in a healthy way, or you're at least maximizing the chances of that occurring.
Beautiful. And mate, before you go, where is the best spot for people to find you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, man. Social media at Stefanos Sifandos, or my website, stefanossifandos.com, or coachwithsteph.com as well.
Beautiful, mate. Really appreciate your time. I know you've got plenty going on, so I appreciate you.
Blake, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure connecting with you.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.